I'm trying something new here. Every week I will randomly reach into one of my many boxes filled with games and pull out one to play for a week. Then I'll do a little mini review of it. This week I randomly pulled out Taito Legends 2. The PS2 has a ton of really good retro compilations. Capcom Classics Collection, Midway Arcade Treasures, Mega Man Anniversary and X Collection, the Sega Genesis Collection, Sonic Mega Collection Plus, Activision Anthology, and the list goes on and on. It's actually really staggering to see all of them. Out of the really good compilations, Taito Legends 2 easily ranks as one of my personal favorites. This retro compilation by Taito, one of the most celebrated developers among the hardcore niche gamers out there, showcases 39 classic arcade games and spans the nearly 20-year gap from 1979 with Lunar Rescue to 1997 with G Darius. I have the first Taito Legends on the original Xbox, but Legends 2 has the better selection of games in my opinion. As with a lot of compilations of this type, you do get your fair share of awkward games that really haven't aged the best by today's standards. One that comes to mind is Violence Fight. It's a two-player fighting game that was released before Street Fighter 2. And it doesn't have what we would generally consider normal or standard gameplay for that genre because it was released before, the standard bearer of the fighting game genre, Street Fighter 2. And then there are some games that just really weren't that good to begin with. For example, Nastar Warrior. It's a sequel to Taito's classic Rastan, and not only does it not live up to its classic prequel, it's just really not that good of a game by any standards. Not today's standards or the standards of yesteryear. But that being said, I am glad that they did include it on the compilation for completion purposes. There are a couple of other examples I could make for games that feel a bit dated in their play. However, they don't harm the overall feel of this compilation. No developer has hit gold in every single game they have ever released. Not a single one. And this compilation still has a great list of games, including some lesser known games that I was really surprised by. Up until this week I could never figure out the Legend of Cage. I couldn't even get past the first part of the game. But I always dug the Legend of the Eight Samurai vibe the game had. It's a classic Japanese movie, you should really check it out if you've never seen it. Though the gameplay isn't as tight as, say, Shinobi or Ninja Gaiden, the Legend of Cage still has plenty of action to be had. Its control scheme is a little awkward, making you hit up to jump, but overall it's a decent game. A tough game, but decent enough once you get the hang of it. Continuing, however, seems to take you back to the beginning of the game. Or maybe I just suck and I didn't make it past the first level. Dungeon magic has become one of my favorites on Legends 2. Imagine Knights of the Round meets Zelda, where you explore dungeons replete with baddies to kill, treasure to collect, booby traps, and a big boss at the end of each level. But then imagine it's made with arcade gaming in mind, and you'll have a basic idea of what dungeon magic has to offer. It's really a unique blend of genres, and as a huge beat-em-up fan, I was really surprised by this one. And like the majority of the games on Legends 2, there is a two-player co-op option, and that expands the fun considerably. Quicks is definitely a unique concept. The player moves their marker to create squares in order to block in the quicks, those wavy lines in the center of the square, while avoiding little sparks that follow you. If the sparks touch you, you die. If the quicks touches your line, you die. Unique concept, and for whatever reason it gives me that 80s Tron vibe. Balloon Bomber has that classic Atari age feel to it. You are an anti-aircraft gun shooting at balloons that are dropping bombs. Hence the name Balloon Bomber. If the bomb hits the ground, a crater is made and you can't drive over it. This can leave the player stuck in one spot helpless as the balloons drop their bombs on you. Luckily, you can also shoot their bombs. Who says destructible environments are an original idea? Okay, that's just a joke there. Obviously, the modern version is a little bit different. To be honest, I have never gotten around to playing an elevator action game. Elevator Action 2 has eaten up a bunch of my time this week. The concept is simple enough. You choose one of 3 characters and ride elevators through a building, killing enemies and looking behind doors to collect data, or to gain new items to use. The enemies also pop out of doors too, and the action gets more intense as time goes on. It's a simple concept with some really addictive gameplay behind it. Ray Maze, assuming that's how this is pronounced, is another surprising one to me. If Pac-Man upgraded to a trike that could collect power-ups like an energy shield and the ability to shoot lasers at his enemies, he would end up with something like Ray Maze. I was sucked into this one for a good while. And though it is one of the many Pac-Man clones, if you will, this one does it right. Its combination of fast gameplay and its own unique twist on the formula set it aside as a really fun game in its own right. It even has giant boss fights thrown in for good measure. And how could I talk about Taito without mentioning Bust-A-Move? Bust-A-Move again has that classic formula that makes the series so addictive. Shooting colored bubbles at bubbles of the same color to make them disappear before time runs out. These games have always been and always will be extremely addictive. This is one of Taito's best known series for a reason. It's just really that fun and really that addictive. There are actually quite a few more games to cover. Some that I enjoyed, some I didn't, and some that were pretty obscure. However, I think that it might be high time that I cover the real reason that Taito Legends 2 is an absolute must-have for retro gamers. As you may expect from the company who pretty much invented the genre with Space Invaders, a game that caused a yen shortage in Japan, Taito Legends 2 showcases a pretty epic grouping of shoot-'em-ups. Aside from there being 3 different versions of Space Invaders on this disc alone, Space Invaders DX, a remastering of the original with the Versus mode and a parody mode, Space Invaders 95, and my personal favorite version, because I don't absolutely suck at it like I do at any game that has to do with dodging and shooting, Majestic 12. MJ12, eh? Alien conspiracy? I wonder. Anyway, there's also a plethora of other great shoot-'em-ups to be played. Games like Gun Frontier, Metal Black, Grid Seeker, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Gekkirindan, are all high-quality offerings to the genre. However, the real reason why Legends 2 should be in every shoot-'em-up fan's library is because it contains 3 of Taito's most legendary and respected shoot-'em-up games. These 3 alone on a disc would make it a killer compilation. The Darius series is a long-running and well-respected series, and Taito Legends 2 not only has Darius Gaiden, but also G Darius. And if that wasn't overkill of awesomeness, they also threw in Raystorm for good measure. Raystorm is the follow-up to Rayforce and is a 3D polygonal vertical scrolling shoot-'em-up with a lock-on system similar to Panzer Dragoon. Not only do you have to worry about the enemies on your plane of the playing field, but the enemies below you as well, which you take out with said lock-on system. This adds a whole new dimension and strategy to the formula. As with a lot of polygonal shooters, sometimes the screen gets so filled with special effects that it's sometimes hard to see the enemy rounds headed your way. It's also sometimes hard to tell if an enemy is on your plane of the playing field or below you. However, you do eventually learn what to look for through continuous play. Overall, Race Storm is hectic and fun, and also like Panzer, as you kill enemies you fill a special attack meter and then unleash it on hordes of unsuspecting enemies. This one has a unique take on the formula and tight gameplay to boot. This is definitely a killer addition to Taito Legends 2. Darius Gaiden is perhaps the most legendary entry into the Darius series. Ask a room full of shoot 'em up fans for their top 10 lists and this game is very likely to come up a lot. Shoot 'em ups are pretty self-explanatory in their concept. You basically just shoot everything that moves while collecting power-ups to upgrade your weapons. And the Darius series also gives players a shield that can take a few hits before it disappears. Without the shield, it's a one-hit death, so there is a little bit of grace in the gameplay. This game doesn't rely on a lot of gimmicks either. It's just straight up fun to play. The biggest gimmick, if you will, is the fact that you fight giant mechanical fish as bosses. Another really cool addition is that the player chooses their own path to the end. Once you beat the starting level, you get to choose between two levels on a pyramid setup. There will always be the same number of levels to play through to the end of the game, but you'll never play through it the same way twice. This means it will take a while to fully explore the game and gives the game a ton of replay value. Overall, this game is really fun to play and has a ton of replay value and a good challenge. This classic shoot 'em up needs to be in any shoot 'em up fan's library. This is arguably the killer app of Taito Legends 2. Darius is the only one of the big three that I already owned a home console port of. I even posted it as an underrated PS1 gem because it doesn't get a lot of mention, especially with games like Einhander stealing all the spotlight for the PS1 shoot 'em up scene. I did once try buying Darius Gaiden for the Saturn, but the guy shipping it shipped it disc only, wrapped in a piece of paper, and wrapped in a thin layer of plastic. Suffice to say, the disc looked like someone took a bite out of it. However, since I have more experience with Darius than the other two, it's sort of my personal favorite of the three. This version of Darius is fully polygonal and now gives the player the ability to capture enemies and use them as weapons. The fully polygonal giant fish bosses look pretty impressive still. But as with Race Storm, it is also sometimes hard to make out enemy fire coming your way. There are also not as many levels in Darius than in Darius Gaiden, so it doesn't have quite as much replay value. That being said, this is a fine addition and it rounds out the top 3 killer apps on Taito Legends 2 very nicely. Some of the more hardcore shoot 'em up fans might note that the Taito Legends versions of these games does give you infinite continues. Because it's the arcade versions, it simulates putting in a credit every time you hit select. That being said, you don't have to hit select if you don't want to. You can actually limit however many credits you use. For people like me who absolutely suck at shoot 'em ups, it's helpful to have infinite continues. But that being said, it does take a lot of challenge out of the game too, because you don't have to start all over, and it's not like that dynamic where you are stuck on a really tough level and you just can't get past this level, so you concentrate more and more and more until you learn the level over and over and over again. Here you can just hit continue and then just spam them with the bombs. But like I said, no one's forcing you to hit select, and you can limit yourself. So it's just kind of up to the player. So that's it for my first edition of these random game grab videos I'm planning to make, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to keep up with them, but I will say I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Taito Legends 2 this week, and it's a great compilation. It should be in any retro gamer's collection. I believe it's also on the Xbox. I'm not sure about the PC, and I don't think it's on the GameCube, but If you're a retro gamer, especially a shoot 'em up fan, this should be in your collection. Tons of great retro games on there, and yeah, I mean, just uh, not much more to say about that. And also, sorry I didn't go a little bit more in depth with some of the reviews, because you could take each game here and do an in depth review on it. You know, that's the thing with compilations when you gotta cover a bunch of games. But we'll see what I pull out next week. Maybe it'll be a full game, and if I get all the way through it, I'll do a full review. If not, I'll just do a review up to the point that I'm at in the game. So, other than that, I will talk to you later. So, have a great night, great evening, or great whatever. 2D Gamer signing off.